In 2012, internet hacker and notorious troll Andrew Auernheimer, better known as weev, was charged with conspiracy under the 1986 Computer Fraud and Abuse Act and was sentenced to 41 months in prison. And it was all for exposing a flaw within AT&T's public server, which led to the scraping of information for thousands of iPad users. But following a motion to appeal his sentence last month, the U.S. Third Circuit Court of Appeals has overturned the verdict on weev's case because it was tried in the wrong jurisdiction. His short time behind bars, however, has made weev even more outspoken than before regarding the egregious overreach of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act to persecute online activists. Well, earlier today, I caught up with weev to discuss all things about his release. Let's talk about what the prosecution argued against your case that led to your guilty conviction. Assistant U.S. Attorney Glenn Maramaco said weev had downloaded the entire iOS system on his computer. He had to decrypt it. He had to do all these things I don't even understand. Yet your defense attorney maintained that there was no hack that took place. You simply revealed a major security flaw at AT&T. How is it possible that you were able to be prosecuted by people that honestly had no idea what the hell it was you even did?
Well, that's a great question. At trial, there was one of AT&T's employees, R. David Halsey, and AT&T didn't instigate this indictment. The FBI did, and R. David Halsey's quote was, "No security was bypassed. I don't think the feds have a case." Like AT&T itself, the so-called victim, didn't think it was victimized and didn't understand why the FBI and the Department of Justice were trying to push an indictment. So. He was put on the stand, and Zach Trotter, who was the U.S. attorney who led his questioning, he said, "Are you a lawyer?" You know, as if lawyers are supposed to somehow be able to define truth in this country. It's positively ridiculous. We don't have rule of law in this country anymore. We have rule by lawyers.
Two-tier justice, man, and you've been the victim of it. Do you think that your case is perhaps the most absurd example of overreach by the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act?
I think that there's some other parallels. I think Aaron Swartz, of course, and Matthew Keys are particularly egregious indictments that I just don't understand how this is supposed to be any modicum of justice.
Unfortunately, even though you're released right now, it's not for the right reasons. weev, in fact, you're still on bail, will probably be tried again in another jurisdiction and potentially go to jail all over again. However, you've said that you're not going to file a motion for double jeopardy. Why?
Because this law is wrong. It's utterly and completely ridiculous. It was written in 1986, and it was drafted by Reagan's team. And in a book, there's a quote from Reagan where he's so senile that he thought the movie War Games was a documentary. And literally he said, I don't understand, you know, but that kid hacked into NORAD, you know? And like I went to prison, and 2 people so far have committed suicide over a crazy indictment, and Keys might go to prison, and Lostetter might go to prison because Reagan was senile, and that's just ridiculous.
Let's talk about your time in prison. You said that you spent half of your time in solitary confinement. Why did you initially get sent to the hole, and what sort of tactics were used against you psychologically to break you down once you were thrown in?
I was initially sent to the hole because, I mean, this case was about my speech, and I was sent to the hole because I continued to speak in prison. I had a PBX system, which is like a computer that answers phone calls. And I would call into it, and it would record my voice and post whatever I said to a web service called SoundCloud. And the federal government didn't like this, and they probably called down to the prison and told them to put me in the hole over it. I endured starvation. I have celiac disease. I require a gluten-free diet, which the prison for quite a while refused to provide. In the hole, you endure sleep deprivation. They shine a light in your face every 15 minutes. They bang on your door. They turn the light off when you want it on, and vice versa. And just general, you know, they wouldn't let me have books towards the end, or magazines, or newspapers, or any mail at all. I was literally in a 6x8 cell with nothing to read. and it's definitely trying, but it's not deterring me from continuing to fight this terrible set of prosecutions by the U.S. government.
Would you say that you were tortured in there? I mean, solitary confinement is torture.
Towards the end, I went on a hunger strike. I was released after I started my hunger strike, and I just saw no way to protest the injustice and yes, potentially torture, definitely by what the UN calls torture, that I received in federal prison.
What's the most amusing thing that happened to you in prison?
There's so many things. I'd say that the funniest thing was I taught all the white nationalists to sing "Springtime for Hitler" from Mel Brooks, the producers, and then they banned that song in the prison because there's MP3 players. They banned that song because it became subversive.
You've announced that you're starting a hedge fund called TRO LLC. Love the name. Talk about the project and why you're doing it.
Well, the reason that I did the iPad data disclosure was because I started a security firm, Goatsy Security, because there's a certain set of, and kinds of exploits that didn't have a market. And this actually is an underlying ethical problem in that right now the only incentives when you develop software exploits are to sell them in secret to the United States government and the security companies that are affiliated and funded by the United States government chiefly. And we know what they do with these software exploits. They use them to spy on people illegally, both the citizens of my country, foreign leaders. So what we're trying to do is build a way to create financial incentives for people to do the right thing, which is come forward and disclose to the public security issues in large corporations. And the way the profit model on this is every time that I've interacted with a major corporation, a publicly traded corporation, the share price falls. It hits the market cap. And that's the same with whether, outside of software, if a car company has a defect in their cars, the stock value drops. If a medical company has pharmaceuticals that hurt people, the stock value drops. And it's absolutely perfectly executable on software companies too. When they have a flaw, we can drop the stock value by disclosing that flaw and telling people about it. And we want to create this structure where people can come forward, talk about the flaws in a very aggressive, criticizing manner instead of this diminutive do what the government says. And it's actually, the profit is far greater doing this potentially than the typical, sell your exploit to the NSA. I don't think hackers are being paid enough, and I don't think the consumers are being served. And there's a huge market here.
Andrew, where can people find out more about your case to help you out and to support you if and when it's reopened and potentially tried again?
They can follow me on Twitter. I'm Rabite on Twitter, R-A-B-I-T-E, and they can go to the CFAA Defense Fund, cfaa-defensefund.com. My attorney, Tor Eklund, is not only defending me on this particular case, but a host of other ludicrous CFAA indictments, including Derek Losetter and Matthew Keys, and people can submit money to him and read about the case. And he's a trench warrior, and he's fought this on a shoestring budget, and he's continuing to protect our rights as Americans.
Thank you so much, Andrew Auernheimer. weev, really appreciate you fighting in the trenches. We need to get this law overturned. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Abby. I appreciate you.